Today we're going to talk about why exes always seem to come back into the picture right when you moved on from them and are actually happy. Now, I'm of the belief that most exes fall victim to something called the phantom ex concept. So given enough time where you weren't threatening their independence, they begin to paint you as this great lost love, which in turn makes them want to re-explore things with you. Now, there's actually a lot to dive in here with, so I want to be economical with our time together. Here's a list of things that we're going to be covering in this video. Number one, we're going to talk a little bit about the avoidant nostalgia loop. Then, obviously, we're going to talk about the phantom ex syndrome. And then finally, the narcissist debate. Let's get down to business. So for anyone who knows me, you would know that anytime I write an article or film a video on a topic, I actually like to base it on some form of psychological research or study. That's where our recent research on avoidance comes into play. Now, according to a poll in our private Facebook support group, over 70% of our clients say they believe that their exes are avoidants. Now, where this becomes interesting really revolves around our history of noticing that avoidant exes have a tendency to come back later. In fact, one of our coaches even mentioned that it's within an avoidance makeup to come back later. You see, according to an article and a video I did a couple of months ago called Why Does a Fearful Avoidant Pull Away, or the stages a fearful avoidant will go through after a breakup, there's 5 distinct stages that you're going to expect them to go through. So first, they're going to avoid all things about the other person. So usually they'll break up with you and then they completely drop you and avoid you. Then feelings begin to kind of surface for them. Then the pendulum begins swinging. They're fighting, some nostalgic feelings, and then they're pushing that away and trying to say, no, I don't want my ex back. Then they actually attempt to move on, and then they fall victim to the nostalgia loop. And it's that nostalgia loop that's of particular interest to our discussion here. Now, I've noticed this nostalgia phenomenon as far back as one of our very first podcast episodes, in which a listener called in asking why is it that their ex always seemed to come back into the picture when they were happy, when they had their own life. Well, assuming your ex is an avoidant, they can fall victim to what's known as a nostalgia loop. A bit of background on this. Now, generally speaking, we found that after a breakup, someone with an avoidant attachment style won't begin missing you until a combination of 3 things happen. You've moved on from the breakup, they moved on from the breakup, and a lot of time has passed. And it all harkens back to this contradiction that all avoidants seem to be fighting. See, all avoidants, they want to fall in love, but they refuse to let anyone close enough for that to actually happen. So in other words, their ideal partner is one that they can fantasize about without the actual threat of an actual commitment taking place. And that's where the foundation for the Phantom X comes in. Now, I've talked a lot about the Phantom X syndrome on my website, on my podcast, and on this YouTube channel. Now, in my opinion, it's probably the single best explanation for why an ex will come back when you're happy. Now, quoting from freetoattach.com, in my opinion, one of the best websites revolving around avoidance, an avoidant person often has a story of a perfect ex in a relationship that wasn't fully realized. The one that got away, to whom no one else can measure up. In reality, the idealized relationship was often lackluster, insecure, and unlikely to be highly functional. So we have 2 avoidant makeups combining here, the nostalgia loop and the Phantom X syndrome. And here's what I've really noticed occurs. Once time goes by, they begin to move on. You begin to move on. You find happiness. Your ex falls victim to nostalgia. They begin to cast you as a Phantom X, and then they try to rekindle. Now, one of the things you'll learn about avoidance in general is they are often trapped in a prison of their own making when it comes to relationships. And this is weirdly by design. They're natural lone wolves. And so they actually prefer to self-sabotage their relationships. Yet the trickiest part about this is that most often they aren't aware that they're doing this. They just do it. It actually has a lot in common with the pattern we've noticed narcissistic individuals fall into. And that's really where the avoidant and narcissistic debate comes into play. Now, when researching what I really wanted to talk about for this video, I kept coming across individuals stating that exes who came back when you were happy tended to be narcissists. Now, there wasn't any real research on this. I just went to Reddit forums and love forums, and consistently you would see, oh, your ex is coming back because they're a narcissist. And I want to really make one thing clear. Narcissists and avoidance are 2 entirely different things, but there is kind of an interesting overlap. So up right now, I'm going to put a graphic by Sir Thrive Tribe. They put together this really great graphic really talking about the narcissistic abuse cycle and how there's 4 stages to it. The first stage is idealize. So it's a phase of immense flattery, gifts, and excessive attention to appeal to your heart, weaken your defense mechanisms, and allow you to be drawn into a whirlwind romance without even realizing it. Next, they devalue you. So admiration begins to cease to exist, and it's replaced with verbal and emotional abuse. This phase is characterized by cruel, degrading, and condescending remarks, often disguised as jokes and sarcasm. Victims feel confused, doubt themselves, and develop low self-esteem, which leads right into stage 3 of the abuse cycle, which is the discard stage. Now, this is where the victim's usefulness to the abuser has ceased. The abuser has found a new supply, someone to replace the victim to fulfill all their needs. The victim is tormented and thrown away as if the love shared between them never existed, which leads into the 4th stage, the Hoover stage. The narcissist attempts to draw a victim back into an abusive relationship by any means necessary, begging, crying, guilt-tripping, projecting, blame-shifting, etc. And then, boom, the idealized stage happens again, and around it goes. Now,